Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. And I am really excited tonight because, as you can see on the screen right here, it's called An Accidental Career. And you're looking at a 58-year journey of just unbelievable news reporting, broadcasting, you name it. This gentleman has done it. And it really was an accidental career, which we're going to talk about. But it is my honor to introduce to you the one and only, the author of this wonderful book, An Accidental Career, Mr. Hal Eisner. And Hal, thank you so much for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Well, it's an honor for me, too, to be here with you, Mike. I really appreciate it. And, I hope the weather's not too bad over where you are. I don't want to rub it in, but we've got a lot of sunshine today.
Well, let's put it this way, Hal. Over the weekend, we got 18 inches of snow. So we're still recovering. So.
Wow. Well, I hope everybody is staying warm and staying safe. That's the bottom line.
Right. So, Hal, we'll talk about a lot of your career, but I want to start with this wonderful book. And the crazy thing is, Hal, is you always hear these stories, and it really is an accidental career because you were in high school, you were a member of a band, and I think a radio station had a contest. Do you want to give sports or news for your school? And really, that's how your journey began. It was really like something you never envisioned, and you just went for it. So talk about that story a little bit, because that's really cool.
Thanks for reading it. I think you've got that down. What it was that I was in the high school band, played saxophone. I was out on the field every Friday night marching to the music of the band. And local radio station had a contest. Send in a postcard. Tell us why you want to report the high school football score on Friday night. I thought, that sounds like fun. And I thought, I'll send it a postcard. You know what? You never know what's going to happen when you do something like that. And sure enough, I won for my school. And because of that, we're having this conversation. My plan was to go to college and go to law school. It wasn't really to get into broadcasting and end up on television in Los Angeles. So accidents happen. We're not talking about the kind where cars hit each other, but accidents happen. And sometimes if you pay attention to them, they can actually be very, very good.
No doubt about it. And Hal, you've done both, but you started off in radio. And the thing about radio, Hal, is it's important to paint the picture no matter what you're doing, whether it's doing play-by-play for sports or reporting news or whatever it could be. If you're talking about the Oscars, things like that, you kind of have to, the viewer can't see it. So you have to point that out to them. You really have to, like I said, paint the picture. So while radio is a lot of fun, it could be very challenging as well.
Well, it can be. And when you're a broadcast journalist, you're trying to figure out, what do I paint on this blank canvas? And if it's a fire, maybe the flames are licking out from under the stairwell, right? So you're drawing a picture of raging flames. But in television, you see that in the news footage. And so if a picture says 1,000 words and you're showing a picture, then you have to find another 1,000 words to be able to tell the story that picture is talking about. And it's just a completely different reporting style, and it takes a little getting used to. But you know what? They're both great. My first love was radio, and I think it always will be my first love.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I love radio as well. And one of the things that's a little disappointing to me, Hal, I don't know how you feel about it, but too many radio hosts, like successful radio hosts, they now allow their shows to be simulcast. So now you could see it on TV. And I get that fans who follow somebody they really like, they want to see them on TV. But I almost feel like it takes away from the radio aspect of it, because now you're not listening to them. If you're listening to somebody on the radio, you're trying to picture like, when they were home and they were watching something on the news and they're talking about it, you're envisioning that, where on TV, when you see TV too much, it kind of takes away from the radio part of it.
I think there's, if you're a purist, you want radio to be radio and TV to be TV. And the crossover, while it may be important for some reason or another, depending on why a programmer is trying to bring these two things together, I never had that experience. And it's interesting to hear you say that it sort of really takes away from the job that you're doing, because I think that, these broadcast mediums are, they're really amazing. They really are remarkable. But the bottom line is that journalism is journalism is journalism. Big J. And, if you're going to tell a story wherever you do it, whether it's on a radio station, a TV station, maybe someday it'll be on a hologram, or like I like to say, a halogram. But, it doesn't matter. The platforms always change because technology changes. And so as a result of that, it doesn't really matter what the platform is. The question is, are you ethical? Are you getting two sources for every piece of information you want to put out there, and making sure you're not going to end up in court with a lawsuit because you got it wrong? And I think that if you do get it wrong, because we are humans and people can make an error, and if you are wrong, you get back on the air and correct it and apologize right away. And that's what you're supposed to do. So, the crossover thing is interesting. I don't know a lot about that, but I know that regardless of what medium you're in, and this goes for print also, but regardless of what medium you're in, you got some responsibilities.
No doubt about it. And the book touches on so many things, Hal, because in a career that you've had, I mean, listen, when you're covering the news, you're going to cover so many stories. But the one thing I wanted to talk to you about real quick that I really admire about you, and I'm glad you did this, is I am getting sick and tired, whether it's news, whether it's sports, whatever it is, that people just assume the media is always lying. And it's because I'll give you a good example. I don't want to get too political, but it's almost like if you're a Republican and something's going on with the person you're polling for, oh, it's fake news. If you're a Democrat, it's similar to that. Like it's always quick to just blame the media, when most of the time, this isn't the National Enquirer. This is people that, if their shift starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, they're up at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to give you the very best news. So I think it's so unfair the way people want to blame the media for everything when somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing.
It's an interesting thing you point out. And I think that, if you look at it from a historical perspective, there has always been friction between media and politicians. Why? Yeah. Because we shine a spotlight. If you do a great job, you're going to get a great big spotlight on you. And if there's a problem, you're going to get a great big spotlight on you. And so, we have this thing that we do, but that's why we have to deal with it responsibly. And I don't know about you, Mike. I certainly have never been to a station or known anybody at a station that's made up a story and put that out there as if it was fact. That's fake, but I've never seen that. So in my way of thinking, there is no fake news. What there is there a blurring of the lines between commentary and mainstream media news. Commentary, which also goes way back, even in the days of Walter Cronkite, if I remember correctly, Eric Severide was a commentator. He gave out his opinion on something. There have always been people like this. When we got to the 24-hour universe, it's just that, you in filling the time, it wasn't just filling it with news stories, it was filling it with news and commentary. Somehow the line between news and commentary blurred, and people started to think, oh, that must be the news and they're very much to the left, or that must be the news and they're very much to the right. And I don't see it that way, because I still think, just like you have radio where you have music on each side of the hour, and then you have news on the top and the bottom, you have that in talk radio too. And you kind of have that in cable news, because if somebody who is a commentator is talking and something's breaking, they go to a reporter. They go to a reporter to get the story. So I think that we're too quick to want to put the blame somewhere. And people have always done that, though. I mean, we're low-hanging fruit. It's pretty hard for us to dodge the bullets, if you were, of people who want to take aim. But that's our job, and we have to have hard candy shells. We have to be insensitive to that. We have to be able to do the job. If we can't do that, how do we get in the face of a mayor or a politician? And how do we get into the face of a police officer, police chief, and stand up for what we have to stand up for? We are the public. That's our job. We're doing that. Everybody else is at work. We're doing it for them. And so we get the information. We put it back out there in the community. It's always been this way. Before I came on board and after I retired, I have not seen a difference in responsibility or ethics, I have seen a difference in perception.
Right. And how, interestingly enough, it's almost like you didn't know it at the time, but it's almost like you were kind of born into news in a way because you were living in Dallas at the time when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And listen, there was nobody more popular than John F. Kennedy when he was in office. I mean, he was loved by everybody. So, I mean, that had to be kind of traumatic for you as a kid to see something. Not obviously you didn't see it, but to be around it, it had to be horrible.
I was close enough. I mean, you know, I moved to Dallas with my family at the age of 13. Dad got promoted within his company, and we all went along with him. We had gone from Pittsburgh to Dallas, Texas. A couple of months later is when the bullets rang out. And prior to all of this, we had older presidents. We had Dwight Eisenhower. We had Harry Truman. All of a sudden, here's this young guy. And people saw hope in that. They called it Camelot. And they saw hope, and it was exciting. Now, I'm not going to say that everybody loved everybody, because you always have political opposites. And so, you know, there were certainly people back in Kennedy's day that didn't care for the things that he espoused for. But that's politics. That's America. And so when this happened, I was in junior high school. I was in ninth grade science. And Lloyd Bell he was the principal, got on the PA system and said, you know, I've got some bad news, but the president has been shot in the motorcade route. And he said that the televisions had been set up in the auditorium. We could go do that. Mr. Hofrichter, who was my science teacher, as soon as those words came out of Lloyd Bell's mouth, his head went into his hand, just like that. And you could tell the emotion, you could tell the impact of those words on this teacher. And I think we all felt the same way. And I think that over the days that followed, it really played out on our emotions. I think Dallas was really uncomfortable. Dallas felt like, how could that happen in our city? But, you know, I think that, you know, just as I was you know, in the front row to history then, not planning on it, of course, I was a front row to history throughout my career. That's what journalists do. We write the first draft of the script of history because we see the Northridge earthquake. We see what happens at Columbine. We see what happens at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas when gunfire, you know, rips through the air. We see these things. We report these things. We're writing history. And so in many ways, this book isn't just what my life was like. It goes back to my childhood. But, you know, it really is a history book, too, in a way, because of all the history that I got to see.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the other thing, Hal, that I really admire and why people should read this book as well, is the fact that, again, people love to go after the media, label them this, label them that. But those same people, I feel like, don't give back to their community and things like that. And you've given back to your field by launching Camp News, which is a great mentoring program. And that's really something that I think people would enjoy if they read this book. And I mean, that's got to be something that ranks right up there in your like top 5 of things you're proudest to do in your career.
Well, fundamentally, and I don't know about you, but fundamentally, people open doors for us. We don't just do things in a vacuum. People open doors. And people opened doors in my career, gave me opportunities. And then when you grow up in the business, whatever business you're in, I sort of feel like you're supposed to do the same thing for other people. It's just the social right thing to do. And I wanted to be able to do mentoring, but more like on testosterone. And so instead of doing just one-on-one mentoring, which I've always done, I set up a camp back in 2000 where we brought in news people and police and fire and sheriff's deputies and the DEA and other agents and agencies. And we created, and this is the only time we're going to hear me say this, fake news. We created a story that we could help students mentor. Now, these students are largely from colleges. They're learning how to be broadcast journalists. So it's a natural extension for them to spend a weekend with professionals because they can pick our brains. This is what they want to do when they grow up. They may be about to graduate, may be graduating, but this is largely the population of the camp. And, I think that it has been very successful for a lot of people. We've had people who were there in the year 2000. It happens once a year on a weekend in December. But we had people there in 2000 that are now broadcasters all over the country, not because of the camp, but because they had the fire in the belly. And I have seen the students come through every year, and I have always had the same reaction. And the reaction has always been, we're in good shape. We have people who care. We have people who have the fire in the belly. They have the ethics in their heart, and they have the brains. And I've always felt, as I've seen the crop of new students come through, that we're in good shape. Now, the notion of pushing it forward, let me just give you a personal story on that. I was having breakfast with my son in a coffee shop, and we went up to pay the bill. And the lady behind the cash register said, you don't have to pay anything. I said, why? And she said, well, you remember the man that was sitting in the corner with white hair? And I thought, yeah, I remember him. He comes in every week and he picks somebody to buy breakfast for. And it happened to be that on that day, it was me and my son. And it reinforced my feeling, just like people at Starbucks or some other coffee drive-through will buy coffee for the person behind them. It reinforced my feeling that we are good people. We are people who are important to our community. And in order to make ourselves and our communities better places to live, we can do things like this. We can pass it forward. We can help others who are coming up. That was my feeling then. It remains my feeling now.
Yeah. And I mean, you always love hearing those stories. And it really does, like you said, it reaffirms that there are good people in the world. There really are. And you can't just always look at the negative side. You have to always look at the positive side as well.
The cup is half full.
Yeah, exactly. Hal, I think some people could refer to you as a CNN original because you were really there in the early days when that network was starting to launch and take off. And it's amazing when it came out in the 80s. I don't think anybody would have thought that it would be around like it is today, because let's be honest. I mean, for the longest time, as you know, your news was really ABC, NBC, Action News, Eyewitness, all that stuff. Your local news is really CNN. They were one of the first to be nationally news orientated. And you were a part of that. And I mean, just talk about that experience. I remember, I was a young kid, but I really remember CNN a lot when the Gulf War was going on. And, I think of that guy, Charlie. I can't think of his last name, but he was right on the, in the open fire of everything that was going on. He was reporting everything. So, I mean, that's the other thing, too. News people do put their lives on the line.
Yeah, it's true. We're first responders. And regardless of whether it's something in the community or something that's in another country, we are first responders, just like police and fire. In those early days, I didn't have television experience. I had radio experience. And I worked for an all-news radio station in Fort Worth, Texas, KRXV, under a guy named Larry Lamont. He was the news director. And ultimately, he ends up going to CNN, becoming the LA bureau chief. And he thought I had the skill set to be able to take what I was doing on news radio and deal with it on news television. I mean, after all, the idea of 24-hour news wasn't really dissimilar from 24-hour radio news. You're just telling stories, but you have a camera in front of you, or you're in the field. So he had a lot of faith in me. I'm not sure I had that much faith in me, but he had a lot of faith in me. I came out to Los Angeles, and, I had quite the learning curve to deal with because, as I pointed out earlier, the writing for radio and television are two entirely different sciences. And, also a new community and not having the contacts in Los Angeles, and just so many hills to climb. But you know what? I gave it the old college try. I gave it my best shot. And I thought in those days, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but in those days, I thought, I'm lucky if I last 2 weeks. I mean, this is the second largest market in the United States. You had remarkable broadcasters here who had worked their way up the chain from this city and that city and gone to small, medium, large markets before ever getting to LA. And I thought, I'll probably be out of here in 2 weeks. I don't know that I've got what it takes. Well, here we are 43 years later. And I guess the moral of that story is don't stop trying. Keep doing what you're doing and keep doing it as well as you can, because you might accidentally find yourself on the other end of the retirement in a very interesting place. But I never thought I'd get in this business. That was an accident that I got into it. I never thought that I'd end up going from radio to television. Another accident. I mean, it was just all these sort of things that just lined up that just happened, you know, and I think that I'm blessed and lucky and fortunate and happy. And, you know, I never thought I'd write a book. I never thought I'd do something like this. Do you have any idea? I mean, this is mind-boggling, you know, to think that you put together a bunch of chapters with a whole lot of pictures in it. So I think early news television, like CNN, was an effort to try to do something different. The opportunity existed. Why not try it? Ted Turner thought it might be a good idea. And sure enough, here we are this many years later, not just with a mature and grown CNN, but you have other networks that are very similar. So I think it was a good idea. I think that it did bring with it, you know, some challenges and continues to, because I think it does blur the lines between those that are doing commentary and those that are doing news. I think the news people that I know, and I'm very active in the news unit. I'm on the national board of SAG-AFTRA. I, have known virtually all the broadcasters here in LA over the years. And I just think I have a lot of faith in the broadcasters, much more than a lot of people in the public seem to have.
Right. And Hal, the thing is too, like anything else, there's going to be, not everything is going to, yes, reporters are there to cover stories. They want to give as much information to the audience, to the viewer as they can. But like I mentioned earlier, they go through some traumatic things as well, because not everything is, news isn't always happy. It's not. And some of the things you've had to cover over the years, like I said, have been just very tough things to go through. And I start with the riots of Los Angeles in 1992. That was a horrible time. And you had to be right there covering that. And it could not have been easy for you, just as a human being, to have to witness some of the things you had to witness.
It wasn't easy. It was very dangerous. And, you know, I remember being in the news van and driving down one of the major streets, and somebody had thrown a burning sofa right into the middle of the road. I remember that, you know, fellow reporters were ducking under concrete walls because bullets were flying. You know, I remember a Las Vegas reporter that happened to be in town to cover what was going on, and ended up getting near my truck, and he was very, very upset. I could see he was emotional and he was scared. And I took him into my news van. I said, well, "What's wrong? You know, can I help you?" And a bullet had whizzed by him. You know, I don't know how anybody would feel if they hear a bullet whiz by them, but whizzing by you is as close as you get to hitting you. And I think he was traumatized by all of that. And I tried to comfort him, and I tried to reassure him that we're okay. But, you know, it was a very challenging time. The fires that happened, even across from where I lived, there were, you know, there's looting, there were fires. And, you know, I think it is something that can happen. And just like a police officer or firefighter in the field on those very days, we had the same responsibilities to the public of being there right up front in that front row to history, and doing the best we could to protect ourselves.
Yeah, it was a real tough time. And then, I mean, Hal, some of the stories you probably never realize would get I don't want to say get the press, but take on a life of their own. And that trial of the century in 1994, 1995 with O.J. Simpson. I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, the amount of coverage with the news, it was unbelievable. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think there were some people who were watching that never wanted that trial to end because every day it was something different. And you had to report that all the time. And again, I mean, that was the most, I never saw so many different turns from one trial like that. I mean, it was crazy just the amount of stuff that went on during that trial.
Well, to be clear, I covered the crime, and I watched the trial on TV like everybody else. And even on one station I worked at, we had a half-hour show every night recapping the trial of the day. And that was the only trial I've ever seen a show like that, created for. But I think that there was a general interest in trials. That's why you ended up with a court TV.
Yeah.
And a whole channel dedicated to trials. This was a trial that it was a movie of the week. I mean, you had a Heisman Trophy winner, a famous guy who ran through airports and commercials. You had a brutal crime, just a horribly brutal crime. And you had a dream team for a defense, which was extraordinary. I mean, think about those people that were on that team. And then you had, Marsha Clark and Chris Darden were the prosecutors, and it was just everything that you'd want in central casting. I mean, it was really extraordinary, but it was real. The trial was real. What happened at Nicole Brown Simpson's home was real. People died, and in the end, the jury found that O.J. Simpson, they acquitted him. The whole thing about if it doesn't fit, you must acquit, and they're talking about the glove. Of course, down the road in the civil trial was a little different outcome, but I think that, it captivated people. And every once in a while, you end up with a trial like the Murdoch case. And you're familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And that was another one of those, that really captivated the community. It was like another trial of the century type of trial in that community. And so I think that, people are fascinated by things that happen in their communities. And that's why news is so important. Look, we're a reflection. We're like, we're like a bulletin board. You walk by the bulletin board and you got push pins on little notes, and you look at, look at that. I didn't know that event was going to happen on a Saturday night where so-and-so's birthday was going to be. I mean, you find out things on the bulletin board, and that's what we do. I mean, we're a bulletin board, and we give you information that otherwise might be push pinned into cork. And, we bring it to you live. We bring it to you factually is our goal. And of course, anything that's on a stage like that in the public is open for not only absorption, but for criticism.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think what always bothered me about the O.J. Simpson trial was if you watched it, I never felt like the two victims, like people forgot about that. That's what the trial was for. And it became, the dream team versus Marsha Clark and Christopher Darden and Gil Gassetti. I mean, it was everything but really trying to get justice for those victims. I mean, I felt like that kind of took away from a lot of it.
I think that there are certain strategies at play that attorneys might use in order to try to protect their clients. And some of that may be diversionary. Some of that may be, trying to put the attention over here instead of over here. But, I think Marsha Clark and Chris Darden tried what they could to try to convince the jury that their case was right. And I think that Bob Shapiro and the entire team on the Dream side were trying to convince the jury that the prosecution was wrong. And in the end, it's up to 12 people to make that decision.
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes, Hal, even when something tragic is happening, there's sad news, but you could also give good news as a reporter. And there was the one instance, I think, where Martin Sheen and his wife, there were the Malibu wildfires going on, and you were able to relay on air to their children that they were okay. And I think that's got to make you feel good as a reporter when you could give that good news to somebody, because that, listen, we all know that wildfires, those are so dangerous. Like, for you to give them good news that they were okay, that has to be something that makes the job all worth it.
It was, yeah, for sure. I mean, that was a really unusual situation because, what you had there was Charlie Sheen getting on social media and saying, I can't seem to get a hold of my mom and dad. I don't know if they're okay. I mean, the fire's right there where the house is, and and he was worried about them. And that word was at the assignment desk. That they contacted me from the assignment desk and said, if you happen to find Martin Sheen out there, his kids are looking for him. They're worried about him. So I thought, okay, fine. Well, as I was working my way through Malibu and dodging the flames myself, I noticed at Zuma Beach, the very large parking lot there was packed with cars, people who evacuated their homes and were trying to find a safe spot. And they found that spot at Zuma Beach in their cars. So I went into that parking lot with my photographer, and I started looking for Martin Sheen to see if I could find him. Now, Martin Sheen and I were on the same national board of SAG-AFTRA. He represented actors, I represented broadcasters. We were on the same board, but we had never met each other. So when I found him, and I kind of just started working my way around cars, he was in his car. And I tapped on the window and I said, hi, I don't know if you know me, but I'm Hal Eisner, and we're on the same board together. Yeah, we've never met, but I'm on SAG-AFTRA. Well, that opened the door. And he, talked to me, and I said, look, your son Charlie is really worried about you. And I wonder, my camera's over here and I'm about to go on the air. Would you like to get on camera and just say, hey, I'm okay, mom's okay, And he said, I would like to do that. And that's how that happened. But you know what? We can do good things for people. It's not all bad news. The bad news was a fire. The good news was we managed to connect a family together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hal, I mentioned earlier that when you're out there, there is the potential that you're putting your life on the line. And about 5 years ago, you almost, we wouldn't be talking today. I mean, it didn't look good. You got hit by a drunk driver. I mean, and you were covering a story. I mean, that's what you were doing. And I mean, you bring that up a lot in the book, but talk about what that was like, because again, I mean, you look great today, but I mean, that's why I think it's always important to advocate for not getting behind the wheel when you're drinking, because nothing good could come out of it.
Well, there was a driver behind the wheel of an SUV, and 3:00 in the afternoon, twice the legal limit according to authorities. He jumped the curb. He hit the cameraman. He hit me. He hit several tourists, and he went to through the front window of the Highland Market, which is right across from the Chinese Theater. And this book is filled with pictures, but if you take a look at that, that's the car. There were a couple of women sisters from Washington State who ended up underneath that vehicle, that SUV. And last time I checked in with them, it's been a while, but one of them was in a wheelchair, and I'm hoping she didn't have, lifelong injuries. But, authorities said we could have been killed. I mean, this was a kind of accident, crash, really, more than accident, that not only could land us in the hospital, as it did, but this also could end up, leaving you permanently injured or dead. And so we were lucky, we were lucky. And I got a really interesting lesson in humanity. As I was laying on the ground face down, and apparently from the standing position, holding a mic by the camera, I flew through the air and I landed face down on the ground. And I was circled by people who were on the sidewalk, all of whom were saying, don't move. You might have broken bones. Just stay where you are. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know if they were tourists, homeless. I had no idea who they were, but they were all compassionate. They were all really worried about me and my cameraman and the two sisters from Washington State. And they were shooting video. That's why we have pictures. But, you know, and Sky Fox was overhead, and, you know, all of a sudden became the news story of the day. You know, we're not supposed to be the story, but we certainly became the story that day. And I thought that it was nice to know that there were people that were there that cared about us. And not only that, but social media provided the highway for people to find us, to send out. My media exploded. I mean, people were writing us. They were letting us know how worried they were. They saw what happened. They cared. And even to this day, people come up to me and say, "How you feeling? You okay?" So I wanted to get back out there, and I wanted to show everybody I could get back out in front of that camera. I was going to be fine. It happened when I was of retirement age, but I wasn't ready to retire yet. And so I went back to work, and I wasn't going to let some guy behind the wheel that had too much to drink end my career. And I ended it when I wanted to end it, on January 2nd of 2025, which was the 43rd anniversary of my first day on TV in Los Angeles.
Wow. And I mean, what a career it's been, Hal. It really has. And Hal, I was also thinking about this because I think this is something that makes this part of the job so much fun, is all the celebrities you got to cover as well. And I've always been fascinated with Dick Van Dyke. I just think he's a tremendous comedian, actor. I thought his brother Jerry was phenomenal as well. And you got to cover somebody like him and so many others. But just talk about what that experience is like. And I mean, God bless Dick Van Dyke. He turned 100 recently, and he still seems, from everything I could tell, he's still going. He's not like letting age, define what he's going to do.
Well, you know, when I met Dick Van Dyke, I had a show on Sundays, which I did for 8 years, called Fox 11 News in Depth. And when I did that show, we had different guests and different things. And I, through an intermediary, was able to make contact with Dick Van Dyke. And he was 91 years old at the time. I wanted to be able to meet him and see if we could do a story. And boy, did we do a story. I mean, you know, I have pictures in this book, and they're not something that are coming right up, but he showed me how to do some soft shoe. I'm lucky if I could, dance. I get the right foot in front of the other one. We sang Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious together in kind of a semi-duet in a 2-shot on camera. And he was delightful. He was 91 years old at the time. I said, "We all hope, but do you think you're going to get to 100? He said, "I hope so." And he did. And, he was just a phenomenal person to talk to, just as warm and comfortable as you would imagine. From him tripping over his, chair in the living room of the Dick Van Dyke Show. He met us at the door barefoot. He wasn't all dressed up. He was just very down to earth. He was earthy. And he welcomed us in, and we went around the place, and he showed us little figurines of him and other characters, and in the costume for Mary Poppins, and all this stuff. He loved Stan Laurel. Laurel was a mentor sort of for him, and he had pictures of Stan Laurel in his home. So this was a person that I was so lucky to get to meet, and it was spectacular. And I think making it to 100 was great. And better yet, it was on December 13th. And guess whose birthday is on December 13th?
Yours. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
So,
I think yeah,
it was just one of those things, you just get lucky. And I met, people like George Clooney and, so many celebrities over the years. And it just happens to be where my office is in Los Angeles, and red carpets and brush fires. And, people live here who work in the movies. People live here who work on television. People live here who are singers and dancers and all that sort of thing. And so you do come in contact.
Right. And Hal, I mean, listen, you're not covering a small town or a small state. I mean, Los Angeles, listen, it's right up there with New York. I mean, it's one of the biggest in the world. And you've done this, like you said, 43 years covering it before you retired. And I mean, at the end of the day, I look at those nice little awards behind you. And that's got to make you feel good when you win those, because guess what? You're still human, and the work that you put in. There's nights you don't sleep a lot. I mean, you're constantly trying to give the public the very best information that they need each and every time. So when you get rewarded like that, that makes it all gratifying, and that makes it all worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that awards are acknowledgments, but they're not the end all. And it happened to be that I was on the board of governors of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And so that's the organization that gives out the Emmy Awards, which are the ones over on that side. And I was with the Associated Press Television Radio Association. We gave out the Mark Twain Awards that are back on that side. And we honored people. And, I've been on the lucky receiving end of some nice awards. And I actually, believe it or not, though retired, I'm up for an award in the next couple of months for the Golden Mics for one of my shows that we did on Sunday in 2025. So, it's a nice thing. It's not a critical thing. It's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the story and getting the facts right. But the acknowledgments are nice, and, they're appreciated. I just think that even in a world without awards, I would still have loved every second of my career.
No doubt about it. And Hal, so where can people get the book? I mean, how can they order it? And if there's, I'm trying not to spoil too much for people, but what could they expect when they read it?
Well, I think first of all, the bottom line is pay attention to the accidents that happen around you, not the ones where you get hit by a car, but the ones where there's a detour in the road, and maybe you go to the left or maybe you go to the right, but it may change the course of your life. It may change the course of who you have as a partner. It may change the course of who your children are. It may change all kinds of things in your life if you go down this road or go down that road. So I think that, it's really important to pay attention to these things. Thank goodness I did, or you and I wouldn't be having this conversation today. And fortunately for me, I get to meet you. But if I had been an attorney, maybe I'd be in a courtroom today in Texas, and we'd never have our paths cross. So I think that's an overriding message. It's available at Amazon.com. It's at BarnesandNoble.com. It's a paperback. It's also Kindle. It's out there on Kindle as a digital book. And I think that what I would like, if I could say so, is I'd love people to, HalEisner.com is another place where you could get the book. It's a companion site to this. And there's a place on the bottom of HalEisner.com where you could write a little review. You could tell me what you think. I'd love to hear that. I've been turning around things already online from people who, have been writing saying this is a good book, or this is a whatever they're saying. And so I would love that. And even if you're far away, I have made arrangements to be able to sign books if people want that by getting little book plates with a little picture of me holding an Emmy and, to be able to sign something, and I'll mail it to people if they ask me to do so. But, I hope this is something people will get a hold of, and maybe there's some lessons to learn in there. But certainly, if nothing else, it's a life lived. And I think it's an interesting story.
Right. And now, are you doing any book tours or anything like that, like around your area or anything?
Well, this is part of a book tour right here.
Yeah.
I'm doing a virtual book tour. I'm talking to people like you, and I'm actually tonight I'm on Channel 5 here in Los Angeles. A couple weeks ago, I was on Channel 11 here in Los Angeles. I've been on radio stations. I'm doing a book tour, and I just found out that I will be on March 4th having a book signing at Vroman's Books in Pasadena, which is a great big bookstore, and I'm very excited about that. I you know what? If you'd asked me anytime months and months ago, I would have absolutely laughed if you said, "Are you going to be in a bookstore signing books?" You don't imagine yourself doing these things, let alone even publishing a book. So I think that, this is all very interesting. It's fun and it's entertaining. I'm enjoying so much meeting people like you.
Well,
otherwise I wouldn't get to meet you. And now I'm going to watch your podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's a real honor to meet you as well, and a real honor to interview you. But I have to congratulate you on a great career, because listen, that's a lot of years. I know you wouldn't say sacrifice, but you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into what you love. And I'm glad that you're being recognized for it because you deserve that. And what I really find remarkable, Hal, and I told you this early on, is you're giving back. And like I said, I think this camp news thing is just, that's really the thing I loved the most, is that you're doing that because you are giving back. And it just goes to show that somebody helped you when you were younger and you're doing it for other people as well. And it's always good to see that. So congratulations on what has been a Hall of Fame career, and keep up the great work. And I really hope that people will look at this book, read it, and I definitely think they'll get a lot out of it. So great job by you. I really applaud you.
Mike, thank you very much. Everybody out there, stay warm and be safe. Be very careful out there. And I appreciate this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hal. And that's the one and only Hal Eisner. He's a credit to the business, folks. He gave each and every one of us the very best to him each and every day. He never took a day off. He never mailed it in. He went out there all the time to give us the very best news, because without information to current events and local things, everything, whatever it might be, we don't get that. And it's people like himself who gave their years of service so we could have the very best information out there. And I think Hal and so many of his colleagues who are in this business should be applauded for that. So Hal Eisner is one of the real good people, not only in broadcasting, but also in life. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.